Welcome to our panel on accessibility in social media. And today I'm excited, to lead this panel. My name is Bernard Chiira. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya, where I work with the Global Disability Innovation Hub and AMREF Health Africa in what is Africa's first assistive technology accelerator. And I have a deep passion for inclusion, and I'm always interested to lead these conversations. And today our panel really will look at, social media and how these platforms we use every day can become more inclusive. And I would rather not have done this with any other team than the panelists on this group. They will introduce themselves. So let's start with Aubrie. Introduce yourself to the session.
Great. Hi everyone, I'm Aubrie. I'm so excited to be here with you all. I am a marketer at Google, and my interest in disability inclusion originates from the fact that I have a few different disabilities. One is that I can't smile. So if I could smile, I'd be smiling right now. And I have learned that it is good to give an image description, so I will describe the visual here. So I'm Chinese American, I'm wearing a red shirt, and in the background I have some artwork. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Ethan.
Thanks, Aubrie. Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. I am a software engineer at Twitter and also the global chair for our internal business resource group for accessibility, Twitter Able. And I got into digital accessibility when I got out of college, and I realized how inaccessible the apps that I was working on were for people with disabilities, and wanted to advocate as somebody who doesn't have a disability to make these apps more inclusive. So I've been working on that for a few years now at Twitter, especially. And thanks to Jesse, who invited me here today too, has been a great partner in this mission for making social media more accessible.
Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne Mahiral. I am based in Nairobi. I lead public policy for Uber for Sub-Saharan Africa. At the heart of technology, I think at Uber, we believe that we want to use our technology to make it easier for anyone to get wherever they want to go. And I'm personally really excited and honored to be part of this panel. I think it's only recently really that I've been thinking about inclusivity and accessibility in a different way by virtue of the work that we've been doing at Uber. So really happy to contribute and share, what I've learned and what we've been developing in-house. Thanks.
I'm Jesse Beach. I'm an engineering manager at Facebook. Started as an engineer over 5 years ago. And my personal mission is to build the tools that we can use to build more inclusive experiences. And Ethan alluded to some of those tools we've been building together over the past few years. And I'm just super excited to be here to talk about accessibility in social media.
I guess let's get into it. And I will start with my first question to Aubrie. So why do we need to consider accessibility for social media from your perspective? And let's think also about this from the person receiving the information or trying to use any of the platforms we have, specifically persons with disability. Why is this an important topic?
Sometimes disability is described as special needs, but the reality is that the need that we have to belong is not a special need at all. It is a need that all humans have. And I think that from the first moment that we become self-aware as human beings, the question that was asked is, where am I? Where do I fit in this world? What is my place? And as a wheelchair user, as someone who is using a power wheelchair, the physical environment, the physical world is not always accessible to me. And for people like me, sometimes it's tough to even leave the house. And so where do we get our social connection? Well, the internet has so much potential and power to be an equalizer and enable the connection that we would not be allowed otherwise. And so why is it important to have social media be accessible? Because it fulfills a need that we all have. And I think when every wave of technology, whether that be in the physical world, in transportation, in communication technology, if it's not accessible, it leaves people with disabilities behind. And it specifically makes it widen the gap between those who can and those who can't. So, especially today, in the time of the coronavirus pandemic, and the internet is where many of us are getting our social connections. So it's all the more important now that it be accessible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aubrie. And I think just building upon that, sometimes the question of accessibility or the lack of it is not clear to people who have not experienced exclusion and that kind of sense of belonging having been denied to them. So I will go to Ethan just to help us understand this a little better. Can you share with us, some examples of what it means to have inaccessible as social media?
So there's a lot of things that you can do to make your post more accessible that people don't do very often. Well, the first one that's fairly straightforward is adding descriptions to your images or your media content that you add to posts. And a common thing that I see that's super popular is, let's say some celebrity does something really bad and they want to write up their apology. So they go to like a text editor app or their notes app, and they'll write out their apology to get around character limits or different constraints, and take a screenshot of that and add it to their post on social media. And then the next step of what they should do is transcribe that text into an alt text field, which allows the social media app to provide that image description in the alt text for screen reader users. And that's something that they don't do very often. And this makes those written content in text impossible to consume for people who have visual disabilities. And there are other reasons to add alt text to your images on posts too, but this is one common thing that I see. Another thing that I think is really easy behavior to change is avoiding overuse of emojis. Using too many emojis increases the time it takes for assistive technologies to read posts out, because the screen reader reads out all of the descriptions for the emoji. And if you're doing that over and over and over again, it becomes redundant and really hard to take a 30,000 foot view and understand what the post was actually trying to say. So instead, try using fewer emojis to express yourself. One time I saw a tweet that one airline was trying to announce that they were doing free TV, I think, on their airline, and they announced it writing out free TV with TV emojis. So it was, if you're listening to that with assistive technology or a screen reader, it's just going to say TV over and over again, 100 times, and not going to communicate the message that they were trying to convey in the first place. And lastly, I think memes are particularly challenging when it comes to accessibility. One common meme I see on Twitter, and I'm speaking primarily on behalf of my experience on Twitter, but people use visual white space to convey meaning in a lot of different memes. A popular one that's going around right now, it says on the left how it started, and then there's an image below it, and then on the right it says how it's going or how it ended, and then there's an image below that. And it's trying to make a distinction between how something started and then how something is going, but it's relying on visual space to communicate that meme. So assistive technology is going to read out that thing in the direction that the browser tells it to, so left to right or right to left. And in this case, it kind of works, but there are other memes where it really doesn't work, with like ASCII art. So they'll people will try to create a meme using letters to create some image. Let's say like they'll draw a house using letters, and they'll say, in this house, we take off our shoes when we enter in the door. And if the screen reader is reading out from left to right, it's not going to read it the way that people expect. So I think those are common things that I see that make social media posts inaccessible, and some quick ways that you can address those.
Fantastic, Ethan. I think that's very informative for anyone who's never thought about accessibility. And I think one of the things I caught from your your description and your perspective on this is the need for behavior change, which is usually very, very hard to do if people are used to like just posting a lot of emojis and stuff like that. And I'll come back to you just to kind of see how can we maybe make this behavior change easier. My next question, and I want to invite Cezanne right now. No, actually, I want to invite Jesse. Sorry, Cezanne, I'll come back to you. Jesse, you worked, in this space in Facebook, and you've obviously seen what benefits, inclusive social media could bring, to users. So could you really just help us understand that a little bit, and share maybe some examples of, probably what you've seen on when social media becomes accessible? What are some of the benefits that users can start experiencing?
One of the perspectives that you gain when working in a company that is grounded in community is the way that our connections grow as we move away from our close friends to our secondary friends to our acquaintances. You can go from 5 people to 20 people to 100 people to 1,000 people that still experience and receive updates and announcements and posts. And when we're sharing life moments and things that we want other people to experience with us, it can be a little difficult to understand how all of those people are going to be receiving that information. We really want to make that information automatic and respectful to everyone's preferences, to their needs. So I'll give a personal anecdote. I have a lot of friends who speak Persian, and they will often speak Persian between each other. It's really helpful for me to have an automatic translation on Facebook, where I can go and click a button and see what they're talking about, have that translated so I can be part of that conversation. Alternatively, one of the stories that I like to think to is we have a technology that can describe images, can provide keywords for things that are in an image. And one of the most exciting life events that a couple might experience is having a child. So they post a picture of their new family, and they just say, our new baby, or they might say something very simple in the description, like, today's the day, and a picture of their family with their new child. And we can go ahead and describe that image in addition to the description or the message that that person put into the post, so that today's the day becomes contextualized with the description of the image, and your friends and family that are in your outer circles can participate in that moment with you, because we're making that experience automatic. So I think when we're doing inclusion and accessibility well, we're allowing people to express themselves in the way that feels natural to them. And for the folks who are receiving that information on their side, we're making it easy to get that information in the format that's most useful for them.
Just speaking from the point that Aubrie raised of, naturally as human beings, we have that innate need to be included and to be part of conversations. And I think what you're bringing out is, social media elevates this on a digital platform and should not deny, persons with disability the same experiences that everyone else is actually, experiencing. I think that's a very important aspect, and I think a great benefit to users. I think social media would be meaningless if it wasn't connected to people's real life experiences. So absolutely. So Cezanne, I want to come to you now. And you worked in Uber, you engaged with governments, you understand things from a policy perspective. Can you tell us what Uber is doing, to make, or actually how Uber's accessibility experience is, and what are some of the things people in the services industry, like everything now is about convenience, and at the touch of a button, you have your Uber, you have your food. Tell us a little bit, what is Uber doing and what has been your experience with promoting accessibility?
Thanks so much, Bernard. I think exactly to your point, I think the ability to apply a technology layer to mobility has really transformed the way that people with disabilities are able to move around. And I think this applies both for riders as well as for drivers. So if I start just talking about the rider side of things, what we've seen is that technology has made it easier for riders with disabilities to move around. I think, number one, just by transportation being available on demand, you can push a button and you can get a ride, and you no longer have to go through a dispatch or stand on the side of the street in order to be able to get a car. I think the other abilities that we have through the technology are things like cashless payments, which avoid riders having to deal with counting out and exchanging cash with a driver. We've got other features in apps such as real-time GPS, so that you can look and track where you're going, and it gives you a lot more peace of mind than you had before. We have the ability for you to share your ride with loved ones so people can see where you are on your trip. Also within the app, there's a number of other safety features where you've got tips around safety, you've got access to our community guidelines, you can see the different things that we have with law enforcement, including emergency SOS buttons and things like that. And at the end of the trip, being able to rate the ride, both from the driver's side as well as the rider's side, makes the platform overall more safe for everyone, because then we're able to deal with bad actors who are operating on the platform. I think speaking very specifically to riders who have different kinds of disabilities, for those who are blind or who have low vision, we've introduced voice over iOS and Android talkback technology, and wireless Braille display compatibility, which makes it easier for riders who are blind to be able to navigate the app. For riders who are deaf or hard of hearing, we have enabled the app to be fully functional without any audio. So assistive technologies such as visible and vibrating alerts can help riders who are deaf or hard of hearing to use the app easily. Since the app offers the ability to enter your destination, it helps to facilitate communication between the rider and the driver. And in addition, with in-app messaging, riders and drivers can communicate directly within the app. We are also constantly refining our products and technologies to be more accessible for people with physical disabilities. In a number of cities around the world, we have Uber Wave, which is the wheelchair access vehicles that allow riders who have non-folding or motorized wheelchairs to be able to connect with drivers who have the right vehicles to be able to take them around, with the ramps and the lifts. In a number of places, in fact, over cities around the world, including Nairobi, we have Uber Assist, where our top drivers have been specially trained on how to assist riders who may have different disabilities or even the elderly to be able to get into the car, help them during the trip, help them to get out of the car. So this is really, a summary of the different things we've done on the rider side. And on the driver side, we have special features for drivers who are deaf or hard of hearing. In the US, especially, we've partnered with the Communication Service for the Deaf and with the National Association of the Deaf and Telecommunications for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to specially design and implement a series of different product capabilities to improve the driver experience. So for example, when a driver receives a ride request, instead of having the beep, beep, beep that you would generally hear, it's a flashing trip request, so it's easy to catch the driver's attention. We have the ability to drivers to turn off calling, so riders are forced to use text messages in order to communicate with the driver instead of trying to call. I spoke already about the prompt for the rider to already input their destination, so then it becomes easier for the driver to know not only where to pick them up from, but where they're going. And also for riders, we have a message to let them know that their driver is deaf or hard of hearing, so they know what to expect when the driver is picking them up. And then I think finally, just to close off, we also open the platform for drivers with ambulatory disabilities. So as long as you are legally qualified to drive, we welcome you onto the platform. In Nairobi, we have a number of disabled drivers who are missing a leg, who are missing an arm, and they're able to work very well on the app. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. I think, wow, that's a lot of accessibility features, and I'm gonna come back to you as we close to just ask you, what are the tips? What are the tips you could share to make accessibility more obvious? I think one of the challenges we face is people don't know about these features, even when platforms are building or working hard to make them available. I'm gonna now maybe switch on to some of the questions coming through from our audience. And the first question here is, what does Google do to make the Play Store accessible? This is for you, Aubrie, if you want to answer that. What does Google do to make the Play Store accessible?
I will answer this question as best as I can, being a marketer, not a nerd on that department, but I'll say that it's been a journey. Let's put it that way. It's been a process, and it's one that I'm very committed to. And this is saying that internally, Google has the right best practices and standards in place, has described itself as not conventional company. And so as a result, there are a lot of ways that teams are empowered to move fast and be agile. And sometimes this means missing things or forgetting things along the way. I'm not familiar with the accessibility level of the Play Store specifically, but I'll take it as a note to look into it. And if you had any particular concerns about it, feel free to reach out to me. I'll add it to my very long list of things I want to change in the company.
Thank you, Aubrie. Quite a stream of questions now coming in, so I'm going to try and be quick so that we at least cover most of them. So there's a question here about hashtags, and someone is asking, should we be using hashtags when we post messages? Can disabled people access them?
I can give one point of advice for hashtags that we found in our research. The best way to format a hashtag is what's called camel case. So every word in the hashtag has a capital letter, so that if you were to pull them apart, it would be like multiple words starting with a capital letter, and you smush them together. And that allows a machine that's reading that word to understand where to put the beats, so that if it's expressing it through, let's say, audio, it will read it as separate words and not as a jumble of letters all together.
Fantastic.
I'll add one little note to that, which is that camel tooth and the Stephanie described is also useful for people who may have dyslexia. So just looking at the letters.
Fantastic. There's a question here specifically for Twitter, and they're asking, can Twitter show transcripts for audio files now? I heard there were problems with that.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, so a few months ago, we launched voice tweets, and it was fairly controversial because, I mean, we built processes at Twitter so that we don't release things that are inaccessible to people, and somehow this fell in the cracks through those processes. And since then, we've taken a really hard look at how we handle accessibility at Twitter, and we're doing a few things to kind of address it. But to quickly answer your question, transcriptions is something that was not part of the initial design, and now the team is scoping out what that would look like, and I think it's slated for early 2021. It's fairly difficult technology to kind of build from scratch. We have some media understanding teams, but I think they're trying to balance the approach of allowing people to upload their own transcriptions and doing it automatically for them, as Jesse alluded to earlier. Having, on the consumer side, having someone being able to consume a voice tweet the way that best works for them, without having the author having to do extra work as well. In regard to the changing processes, we are building a new accessibility team from scratch. We never had a dedicated accessibility team. It was always a group of folks who were really passionate about it, trying to make change within the company and ensure that the products that we're building were accessible. So now we'll have some dedicated experts who are not only care about it, but also know what they're doing a bit better, working on accessibility at Twitter and tackling it from the approach of inclusion and diversity as well. We're going to have an accessibility center of excellence that tries to make Twitter a better place to work for people with disabilities. So no, we don't have transcriptions yet. It's coming, but we learned a lot from that.
Thank you, Ethan. As we wrap up, I want to give each one of you an opportunity to give us your top tips on accessibility in the context of social media and to users, but also I feel also platform developers, because anyone who's developing software has a key role to play for making it accessible. Maybe we start with you, Aubrie. What would be your tips as we close?
I'll say this. In my opinion, accessibility is just one side of disability inclusion. Accessibility is the technological side, but there's another side to disability inclusion, and that is the social side, the cultural side. So what I would encourage everyone to think about is, how is not just the format accessible, but how is the content inclusive? How are you including disabled people in every conversation that you have about people? That would be my advice.
Thank you, Aubrie. Absolutely. Cezanne?
For me, I would think about three things, and Bernard, I think you already alluded to some of them. I think for platforms like ours, I think the first thing is listening. A couple months ago, I was on a call with some writers in South Africa who had a number of different disabilities, and it was only really by listening to their experiences using the app that I, for one, was better able to appreciate the challenges that they have and figure out, what we as a company need to do better. I think the second thing is around creating awareness. As you heard, there's lots of features that I described that are available on the app, and many people they don't know that they exist. And so we need to do a lot more to really educate riders about the different features that are available, and work, I think, with the different associations to make sure that they can translate some of these things to their members, and just create more widespread appreciation of how people can move around using technology. And finally, I think on the part of Uber and other ride-sharing companies, we've got a real responsibility to make sure that we can build and roll out products to continue to improve the experience for people with disabilities, and not focus these just on certain geographies, but make sure that these are available globally. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, if you're a business, you're using social media to express to a wide audience, I recommend taking the time to learn what features and support the platform you're using has at your disposal. Everyone here represents a company that has put a lot of time and effort into thinking about how to support accessibility and inclusion. And those features are often very well described in help documentation and how-to guides. So a little bit of time invested on that side will open up a world of inclusion for the things that you're putting out there for your audience.
Fantastic. And finally, Ethan.
Use your voice, because we're definitely listening. We have a Slack channel at Twitter that pipes in every tweet that gets at Twitter accessibility. And this is one of the main ways that we get feedback about how to make our apps more accessible. And once there's a lot of noise about something, that's when it starts to build momentum and we can act on it. So a lot of companies have different feedback mechanisms for accessibility. I know Facebook has a Twitter account. I'm sure that there's some way to contact them through Facebook. And yeah, I would say speak up if something's not working for you. And Bernard, you mentioned something about for platform developers. Just coming from the perspective of an engineer, I think one important thing that I learned about accessibility was, at first I really thought of it as something that's super technical, just implementation details. If you design a button the right way, then your app becomes accessible. If you design, if you choose the right native HTML element, then you have built-in accessibility, which is true. But I think a lot of the things that we're talking about today has proven that features themselves provide accessibility too. So think about the way that you're building something and the implementation of that thing too. There's two parts to this. So providing accessibility features is just as important as building those features with accessibility built in.
Thank you so much, Ethan. So I want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists. You really educated us around social media accessibility, and we hope this conversation can continue offline. And I will let you guys go off to our next exciting Digital Accessibility Awards. Thank you very, very much, everyone, and let's continue the conversation.